guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in December, and sadly out of the entire list of December TBR that I had, I ended up not reading two books, which was China Rich Girlfriend and Empire Storms by Sarah J. Maas. Well, China Rich Girlfriend by Kevin Kwan and Empire Storms by Sarah J. Maas, which is really unfortunate because I really wanted to get to those two books. So let's just kind of jump right in. So I guess I'm going to have to do this in mismatched order because I don't think I picked up the books in order that I read them. But one of the books that I ended up finishing in December is The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. I ended up giving this, I believe, a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Let me see. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought that the book was perfect. I loved the writing. I definitely enjoyed it. I liked seeing where the characters were wrapping up, where their relationships were all headed. I liked the overall conclusion of the books, as this is the last book to the Ravencycle Quartet. However, what really dinged me was that toward the end we saw a lot of brand new characters that I didn't think they had a place there, and there was a weird plot that I can't spoil because it gets introduced in this book that I felt like didn't have much of a lead up going into the fourth book. It just kind of popped out of nowhere, so I really took it down for that. But overall, I loved this book. I love the series, and I definitely would highly recommend it to everyone else. The next book that I read in December was actually kind of a weird short story novella from another larger series that I'm actually rereading this month, and that is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is, like I said, this is a novella after the events of A Court of Wings and Ruin, and happens, I think, about a year afterwards, where they're celebrating kind of their first Christmas together as like a family. So that's going on. I overall gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I really, like I said, enjoyed reading this book. I loved seeing where the characters were after a year, seeing how they were all progressing and see what they wanted out of their lives. However, at the end of it, like when I finished the book, I wasn't as satisfied with it. I thought that while it was great, it was missing something. It felt more like a beginning to another larger work than it was to a novella. There wasn't much of a plot. There wasn't a ton going on that really kind of got me interested. And all the things that they were talking about that was going to happen was implied that there's going to be more of a novel afterward, which is fine. I don't mind that. But I feel like she could have spent more time either developing this novella or keeping the novella and just inserting it into a larger book that's part of a different series or something, because I feel like that would have benefited more than how this kind of turned out. The next book that I read in December is one that I was actually kind of slightly disappointed about, and that is Ink Mistress by Audrey Coulthurst. If you guys don't know, this is a prequel novel to A Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. This is her second novel, and it follows I believe her name is Asra, there we go. Yeah, Asra, who is a demigod who can write the future out with her blood. In an attempt to help her girlfriend out, Inna, she ends up killing the village that Inna is from, thus therefore setting Inna out on a weird quest to kill the king, whereas Asra wants to stop that from happening. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was enjoyable. We saw a lot more of Audrey Coulthurst trying to build upon the world and the world building itself, but the magic system was still a little to me, and I honestly did not enjoy the main character, which was really weird to say because even if they are an unlikable main character, I still find ways to like them or to identify with them. But I felt like there was just some really weird things going on that I wasn't a huge fan of, honestly, that could have been done differently. But I did enjoy it. I thought the LGBT rep was great. We did have a wonderful bisexual representation where we saw a character go from the same sex relationship to an opposite sex relationship. So it was wonderful to see that because we don't see that a lot with bisexual rep in fantasy. So yeah. But other than that, I think that this was a good book. I just think it needs more time to develop itself, and maybe like for Audrey to sit down and develop a magic system and just kind of a general magic system, and like flesh upon the characters that she had for this book, because it was good, but I felt like it was missing something. The next book that I read is one that is like a semi-reread, but also not a reread, and that is Percy Jackson and the Olympian Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and if you guys don't know, this is the second book to the series, and it follows Percy Jackson. He's kind of stuck having to save the world, again, from his lovely relatives, again. I read this way back in middle school. I don't remember much about it, and now I'm trying to finish up the series by reading him again. So yeah, but like I said, 4 out of 5 stars. I loved seeing this, their characters kind of progress. I love seeing them become more than what they were and see them kind of grow into their own roles and accept that like this weird thing called fate is happening and they're stuck with it. The one thing that dinged me was that I felt there was a lot of stuff going on with Clarice during this novel. We saw more of her in this novel than we did the previous one. And I felt like we were supposed to feel bad for her. Like, even Percy said that he felt bad. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't bring myself to feel that for her. There wasn't anything that, in her characterization, that made me sit down and go, oh, that kind of really sucks. I was just kind of like, you know what? Suck it up, Buttercup. It's not my problem. Which is really bad to say because she's like 12. But, like, I really just had trouble feeling remorse for this character. Another book that I read in December, which was actually the first book that I read, is Stop Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco. This is the second book to the Stalking Prince Dracula series, and here we follow Audrey Rose as she and Thomas Cresswell travel to Romania to study in this wonderful in one of the most prestigious kind of mortuary schools. They open up bodies when they're dead and examine the parts. I don't remember the name for it, but that is what this book was essentially. And I definitely enjoyed it. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I loved it so much. There was some LGBT rep in this, which I really enjoyed because we are in Victorian times essentially, and that's not really open about, but they were very open in this book and I enjoyed it. I thought the writing was beautiful. I loved how keep saying Audrey Coulter's Carrie Maniscalco kind of showed this side of Audrey of like this mourning, this PTSD, while Thomas is trying to figure out his own feelings towards it and try to help her out. The one thing that dinged me was that toward the end when the big reveal was happening, or like leading up to it, it felt very Indiana Jonesy, and I don't know if it was just me, but I wasn't a huge fan of the Indiana Jones aspect there. I didn't think that there was much of a need for the traps and everything, but overall I definitely did enjoy it and would highly recommend you guys pick up the first book because you guys will not be disappointed in historical fiction, serial killer, thriller, mystery novel kind of situation with a female lead. So yeah, the next book that I read is One Darkthrone by Kendara Blake, and this is the sequel to the Three Dark Crowns book, which is the first one, and it follows 3 sisters who have been brought up their entire life that they were gonna have to kill their other like triplet to become queen. We have an elementalist, a poisoner, and a naturalist, which kind of controls animals and all that stuff. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I was really scared going into this book, mainly because the first book was so slow when I first read it that I ended up postponing it, but I reread the first book, loved it, jumped right back into the second book, and I adored how the writing style was. I found myself rooting for more of the characters, more than just Mirabella, even though I want her to be so happy in life by the end of the series, or just die peacefully. Really, that's all I want out of her. Same thing with Arsinoe. I thought that her characterization was a lot better in this book and I could feel something for her. Same with like Billy and Jules and Joseph. Katerine can still go die in a hole. I don't feel bad in saying that because of her current circumstances, but I definitely felt like these characters were getting fleshed out and the plot was a lot more, it moved a lot faster pace and we got to see more of like the world around them and how these characters react to this kind of situation. What dinged me the most was that we had like, I'm tired of like certain love triangle tropes at this point. And we ended up having a love triangle in the beginning of the series where I was expecting more to come out of it, but it kind of died off without a lot of consequence, or like long-lasting consequence, I should say. And I wasn't a fan of that. And right when we got done with that love triangle, which sort of ended, but not really, we got into another love triangle that also sort of ended, but not really. And I'm really tired of love triangles not going really anywhere at all, except for like the main like head couple that you were going at, and there was like no, I felt like those were like just really flat. And if you're gonna do 2 love triangles, you might as well like flesh them out, especially since the first love triangle that we saw in the first book had a lot of potential to be fleshed out throughout the series. It just kind of died and burned out, and I was just really disappointed with that aspect. The last book that I read in December is really no surprise, because we all know that I really loved this series. and it came out in December, which is what inspired me to do this weird like sequel themed TBR. And that is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. This is the thrilling conclusion to the trilogy of The Dark Artifices, and it follows the events directly after The Lord of Shadows, where everyone kind of died. A lot of people kind of died. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of things that were going on that could have been expounded upon, and I loved how everything kind of closed up and wrapped itself up, essentially. I love where the characters were going. I love that there's still a lot of room for Wicked Powers, which is coming in, like, what, 3 years? I'm very upset about that, but it's fine, because The Last Hours comes out this year, so we have a bit of a buffer, but not enough. However, what dinged me ultimately was I felt like there were so many things in this novel that were convenient, that kind of wrapped things up and made things into a pretty little bow that had really no consequences to it, and I felt like there were just certain things that I was like, there was no lead up to a certain thing that was a really big part of the book, and I just kind of sat there like, we could have gotten a lot more information out of certain aspects had certain things been taken out, or we got more of a consequence of things that were going on. So I loved it overall. I would highly recommend the series, but like I said, I felt like in this book specifically there were a lot of things that were just really too convenient and just too good to be true that it just helped overall wrapping up the thing. But I mean, Cassie Clare's writing gets better every day, so hopefully those aspects will be carried over and expanded upon in the Wicked Powers in like 3 years. But that is it for the books I read in December. I'm still really annoyed that I didn't get to the 2 books I was really anticipating to read in December, but it's fine, we'll get to them eventually. But what books did you guys end up reading in December? What books did you guys end up liking a ton? Leave those in the comments below. I'd like to hear your thoughts on some of the books that I have read, or some of the books you might want me to read soon, or yell at me because I didn't get to certain books, you know, whichever one fits your fancy. And until then, I do upload twice a week, so try to subscribe so you guys can catch up on those. Like these videos if you like these. Again, they happen once a month, not a big deal. But all my social media links will be down below if you want to see what I'm up to, how my writing's going, because I have been posting more about that, and kind of everything else in between. But until the next time I upload this week, or next week, I'll see you guys in the comments and everywhere else. Bye!